and fight back with maltracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classics. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks, cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.
A BB to me, a BB Fahodier. Peace to all of my thinkers, truth speakers, and truth seekers. Welcome to another Truth to Power Talk with your sister, Dr. Ma'at. Thank you for joining another powerful discussion. And tonight I have with me another powerful guest, Dr. Alicia Watkins. How are you doing tonight, Queen?
Oh, I'm doing excellent. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing wonderful, excited, super excited about you coming on the platform. I mean, it was just everything just kind of aligned because for months I've been thinking about, I said, I need to bring someone, bring a therapist, right? You know, a B1 African-centered therapist on here to talk about the trauma in our community. And because I'm reading this book, my book club, we're reading a book called The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein. And in this book, he talks about how the federal government and local governments created Black ghettos. He was saying that like Black poverty, Black ghettos, he said it is a creation of our government. And this guy is coming with receipts. Okay. So he's telling you, he's naming the different administrations, the policies that they created and how those policies adversely impacted the Black community. Essentially, it destroyed our communities. It impoverished the communities that were established. And so in my mind, I'm like, I know that poverty, I know that all of these things traumatized us. You know, poverty, as you and I were talking about on the telephone, it is abuse. It is traumatizing not to be able to have food in your house, right? It's traumatizing to sit and watch the city destroy your community by running a highway through it, right? Or them just demolishing your community because they said, "Oh, we want to put a park there," or we want to use this for, you know, a highway, or we want to use this for whatever. And the children, I saw pictures, Dr. Watkins, of beautiful Black babies watching as their homes were destroyed. And I said, that had to have been traumatizing. And we know from epigenetics that trauma is now passed down through DNA. So I said, I need to bring somebody on to help me unpack this, because I'm not a therapist. I know you have your PhD in social work. You are a certified clinical therapist. And so I said, well, this sister knows what she's talking about. Me, I'm just speculating. You know, that's not my lane. So I said, I need someone to come on and unpack this with me. So I'm super duper happy, you know, and honored to have you. And you were telling me you were talking about this anyway, about how finances, impact poverty. So anyway, just welcome to the show, Dr. Watkins.
Oh, thank you for having me. And let me tell you, I grew up in Gary, Indiana. So I saw firsthand how a community that used to be one of the best communities in the nation, I saw it fall. I mean, I'm a baby of the 80s. And I don't even know if people realize this, but Gary, Indiana used to be the beacon of their education system, used to be one of the best educational systems in the nation. People, when my mom went, because I'm a second generation person from Gary, and when my mom went to Roosevelt High School, people from all over the country would go and visit Gary, Indiana, to see what were they doing with their students that they were doing so wonderful. This is back in the 50s and 60s. Gary, Indiana used to be the top notch, and now it is bottom, basic, nothing. You go through there, you feel like you're in a war zone. As a matter of fact, my nephew, who plays video games all the time, what is that video game? Kids play video games.
Is it the Fortnite, or is it the?
Yes,
okay.
He plays Fortnite all the time. We were riding through Gary, Indiana, and he said, "This place looks like Fortnite. It looks like a Fortnite video game."
Wow.
So I am firsthand witness of watching a city just basically tumble like this. So it is very near and dear to my heart. I was born in Tuskegee, Alabama.
Mm.
in John Andrews Hospital. And that is ground zero of the Tuskegee experiment.
Mm.
I mean, just think about what it did to that entire community. My dad taught at Tuskegee University since I was 3 years old, 4 years old. He taught at that university, and you know what happened in the 80s in Black communities? We had HIV/AIDS, and
Yeah.
so big time universities, University of Alabama, Auburn University, they were all reaching out to him, trying to do research in the community of Tuskegee to find out what's going on with HIV and AIDS. And he's like, I can't promise you anything because this whole community was traumatized by the Tuskegee experiment. No research could ever be done in that city right now, even to this day,
Mm.
decades later. We don't trust. How am I going to trust medical professionals considering the history of the Tuskegee experiment?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so, like you said, that it traumatized that experiment, traumatized an entire community, just like those policies that I was speaking about earlier that were
Mhm.
created and implemented by the federal government and local governments traumatized us by putting us in a situation by making us impoverished. And so I ask you, my first question to you, Dr. Watkins, because I've said it. I said poverty is abuse. It's
Yes,
abuse. And
yes.
so could you help me unpack that? Is it abuse when you are a poor person? Because I don't think we look at it as abuse, or we envision it or think of poverty as abuse. But in fact, poverty is abuse. When you are impoverished, you are being abused. And in so many different ways, mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, that is abuse. And so could you help me unpack that? Do you agree that poverty is abuse?
Yeah, because it's the disempowerment of being impoverished. In our society, we people who live in poverty go through so much stress related to those circumstances. And even I think like how the outside world looks at people who are poor, they look at you like it's a sin because you're poor. Like
Mm,
it's your fault because you're poor. And as a social worker, we understand that poverty is structural.
come on.
It's a structural reason why you're impoverished. What school system you go to, what they teach you in your school systems, what they believe. I used to work when I was a social worker in Chicago. I worked right in the projects. I worked at a school where 3 projects came in. I would sit down with students and I would talk to them about getting them to go to college, getting them to do wonderful things for themselves, getting them to graduate from high school. And they would look at me and they would say, Miss Alicia, we live in the projects. Ain't nothing gonna ever come of us. And I'm like, nobody knows that you live in the projects. They internalized all of that. They thought there was something wrong with them because they lived in impoverishment. And everybody knows the Gabarino study when it talks about economics, community economics, and its relationship and its impact on child abuse cases. So when you are in communities and unemployment rates go up, you know what also goes up? Cases of neglect and child abuse also go up. Because why? Because these communities there's no social cohesion, the violence goes up, single mother homes. These moms are working 2 and 3 jobs, and who's taking care of these children when they come home? These moms are stressed out and overworked and trying to find some love from somebody who may or may not give it to them. And so, where are these children left with when they come home from school? Who do they have to talk to when they have something deeply in their mind? And so, the trauma goes around all around because of economics.
Mm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and while you were talking, Dr. Watkins, I'm thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about how a lot of us were latchkey kids growing up. I'm sitting here and I remember I just actually had a conversation with my mother the other night, and I was like, "Ma, you all weren't there." She was like, "We had to work," and the reality is that they did have to work, and but with them having to work and to make sure that, or to secure our basic physiological needs, then in turn that generation, our generation, and I'm talking about the boomers had to work, right? So then the generation, I'm an 80s baby, I was born in 81, and so our generation, a lot of us were latchkey kids. We had to let ourselves in the house. I'm sitting in the house watching, letting myself. I'm 7 years old and walking a few blocks, well about one block to my house, and I would let myself in. And my mother did a wonderful job training me and told me, told me what to do when you come home. Make sure you lock the door. Make sure you do your homework. And then after you do your homework, you can watch cartoons. So I would come in the house around 3:45, 3:50, knock out my homework. And then I think the Jetsons came on around, I caught the tail end of Captain Chesapeake. And then like the Jetsons would come on, and was it the Jetsons? It may have been the Jetsons or the Smurfs, but I know one of those shows came on, and I would watch that, and my grandmother would call and check up on me. But I say all that to say, what you describe perfectly is what a lot of us experienced. A lot of neglect as a result of being impoverished. And I think that a lot of us don't realize that we're living in poverty because I live right here in Woodlawn. I'm living in the suburbs. And, so this is not poverty. Poverty is when you're living downtown under the bridge and with a cardboard box. That's poverty, right? And I remember when I was 19, one of my buddies said, we belong to the poor working class. And I scolded him. I'm not poor. I live in Woodlawn.
I got a television.
I have a television, right? And we have cable television. Like, what do you mean we're a part of the poor working class? He said, I'm pretty sure that, there's a mortgage on your house. This is what my buddy told me. He said, I'm pretty sure there's a mortgage on your house. He said, I'm pretty sure that your mom probably has a car note that she's paying and probably has credit card debt. And he's naming all of these things. And I'm like, after he said that, I was like, wow. Because he said, if you were rich and wealthy, you wouldn't have debt, right? Like you'd be able to go and buy your house and buy your car and buy certain things, right? You wouldn't have credit cards. You could just swipe your debit card, right? And when he said those things to me, and I was about 15, 16, and that's when the light went off. Wow, we are a part of the poor working class. And then I see how that impacted not just me, that whole generation, Dr. Watkins. The stuff that happened, like you said, molestation, neglect, teenage pregnancies, all of that stuff was linked to our economic problems. So you said that you would say poverty is abuse.
It can be abuse. However, look at us. Look at you, Dr. Maya. Look at me. I mean, I grew up, like I said, in two of the poorest communities in the country, Tuskegee, Alabama, and Gary, Indiana. However, look at where I've come.
Come on,
so there's some resilience there.
There is.
So if you don't take away anything else from this conversation, what I'd like for you to take away is that if you have a safe space of which you can turn to, where you have an empathetic person there, sitting there listening to you. Big mama is there listening to you and hearing your problems. You can lay it all down and she'll hug you up and butter and pat you up and everything. You can win over trauma. And when you're left alone, it's when children and adults, by the way, are left alone to try to figure out all of the things that come along with us. I mean, just think, I was a latchkey kid too. I went to Catholic school, but I walked home, from school with the key around my neck so I can get in or whatever. But when I came home, did I have a safe space of which I had somebody to look out for me? Did I have a parent to help process all of the things that was happening to me at the Catholic school, and what is it to create this safe space, especially as a therapist, is you need an attentive, attuned, very responsive caregiver that will provide you a healthy way of dealing with stress. That is what's going to give you the resilience through all of these tough situations. I grew up with a very close-knit, we didn't have a lot of money, but we were a very close-knit group of family members. We were tight together. And so we helped to protect each other. And I had people that I can turn to when I was stressed out or worried about something, where I was pretty much sheltered from a lot of this. And that's what creates resilience. It also creates substance and character, by the way.
Come on, it does.
I'm always grateful for everything that I have now. I'm like you, I live in the suburbs too, and I know we talked about this before we went on the air. Even though we have physically removed ourselves, and there's some pros and cons to that. Okay?
Come on, facts,
pros and cons to that.
Yes, absolutely.
However, my heart and soul is tied to these communities. And every time I hear something happen in Gary, Indiana, or Tuskegee, or any other community where people look like the people I grew up with, or look like me, I am impacted by that. So it's not like I can totally remove myself from it. Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I'm thinking right now, and I was having a conversation with my mother. This was a while ago about the boomers. And there's something that I noticed about the boomers. And I always talk about the boomers because we're the generation that was raised by the
Yes.
boomers, right?
Hmm.
I noticed that with a lot of boomers, a lot of them tend to be hoarders. And I'm talking about like boomers that I know. A lot of them are like hoarders, and like some people might say pack rats, but and I'm thinking like right now of like 10 baby boomers that I know. If you go over to their homes, they buy a lot of stuff, like they indulge in a lot of materialism. And I said, hoarding, I know that has to be some sort of mental disorder. Like, and when I say that, I'm not saying mentally ill. I'm saying like chaos. Like,
Hmm.
so what they do, and I was thinking about the boomers and how they grew up, right? Because you figure you have the boomers, and then the generation before the boomers were people like my grandmother who were born in the 20s and the 30s. But then a lot of them had like second grade education, third grade education, fourth grade. They didn't finish high school because they were pulled out of school because they had to work on the tobacco farms and things of that nature. So they made sure that their children went to high school no matter what, right? And so a lot of the boomers, they grew up poor, very impoverished. I mean, I've
Yeah.
heard stories in my family of, sugar sandwiches, syrup sandwiches, people having to literally wipe themselves with paper bags. And so now I see like they over accumulate everything. Instead of getting maybe a couple of packages of toilet paper, it's like 10 packages of toilet paper. Instead of getting a few items from the grocery market, the refrigerator's packed. Now it's like I'm into materialism, the Gucci, the Louis, the bags. So I ask you, is that a symptom of their poverty or how they grew up? Is that linked? Is their hoarding
Yes.
linked to them growing up impoverished?
Oh, absolutely. My mom talked about how she grew up in a two-parent family home for the most part, and for most of her life. And she talked about how her shoes had a hole in it, and she had to put cardboard in there and then put her
Mm,
foot in there. And she said it would be cold outside or snowing or something, and then she would have to like have an extra cardboard piece in her pocket so that she can switch it out when she got to school. She was embarrassed being in school.
mm.
Now you go to my mom's house, there's a whole closet full of nothing but shoes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what are you doing with these shoes? And she said, I need to get rid of these shoes. I don't know what to do with all of this. And if you think about it, like these boomers, they were raised by people who went through the Great Depression.
Yes. Yeah.
So I used to live with my grandmother, and she would look. Commonwealth Edison was the light people. You paid a light bill everywhere I went. She was turning off the lights. She's like, Commonwealth Edison is rich. She was very frugal with her money because she had lived through the Great Depression. It was really fascinating living with her. It was really something. But absolutely, they definitely have some sort of psychological impact on how they operate now in terms of accumulating all this stuff. And it just, for me, it feels good to purge. Maybe I grew up
Yeah.
watching that,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Right.
I just want to get stuff I don't need out.
Yes, I'm the same way. I'm like, man, I'll go to the Goodwill.
That's
I'll put
right.
things in the trash. It's like, because I'm like, dang, I don't want to have all that. I don't want, it's clutter. And for
Hmm.
me, clutter is stressful.
It
When
is.
there's a lot of clutter around me, it begins to weigh on me. So I'll go into the closet and throw out old things or donate things, because that clutter is also stressful. But I was always wondering, is there over accumulation of materials linked to them growing up impoverished? And let me ask you this: how do you think that they can correct that, Dr. Watkins? Is there any way to correct that?
Well, one thing is to be aware. Like self-awareness is always important, and
Mm,
being aware of the trauma. And that's the thing. Like when I meet with clients, oftentimes, and I ask them about a history of trauma or things that happened to them, most people be like, "I wasn't never traumatized. Mm-mm, nothing ever traumatic happens to me." But when I ask them, tell me a scenario, when I ask them about different scenarios, they describe incidents that would totally fit the definition of trauma. So part of
absolutely.
it is that a lot of people just aren't aware that a lot of these incidents are interpreted as trauma. They don't know, and the level of distress. that I see when I'm talking to clients and I'm doing the intakes, and I'm like, how's your sleep pattern? Well, I can't sleep at all. I'm up all night.
Mm.
I'm having nightmares, and all of these things are happening to them, or I have all of this anger or intrusive thoughts and intrusive memories, and mitigating behaviors like substance abuse and addictions and all of these things, and also stress and anxiety and depression. All of that is a result of all of these painful, we'll just call it painful memories that they weren't able to work through and weren't able to process. So I spend a lot of time with my clients just raising awareness that I'm just like, this fits the definition of something traumatic. And maybe you're coming to see me because you have this anxiety, and some of it is dealt with some scary things, really frightening things happen to you, and you need to work through them. And I'm telling you, it'll be people in their 50s with things that happened to them when they're 15. And
Mm.
it's almost like it happened today. It's that raw with
Yeah.
them.
And
And
then
help them sort through that.
absolutely. And I've heard that people say you're as old as your trauma. Like
Yes.
I've heard people
Oh,
say that.
yes.
That
Yeah.
you're as old, and so then things happen, you go right back, and it actually just recently happened to me. You go right back to that space. You say, daggone, I thought I was over that. And you're not. You like, dang, you going back to stuff that happened 40 years ago. And I remember, and you as old as your trauma. Like it's I'm telling you. And so let me ask you this.
Mhm.
How do you think poverty impacts Black love, Black marriage?
Oh, okay. Let me tell you, whereas a child needs a safe place of which they can have an adult who's attuned to them and help them, a caregiver to help them process what's going on with them. Definitely, when you become an adult, you also need another person who you can be able to create this safe space with. Now, the issue is that if you experience complex trauma early on, environmental and all of these things, and you don't have a place of a safe place to process them, it has an impact on your ability to regulate your emotions. So everything can stress you out, you can have a meltdown.
Mm.
In people who've dealt with unresolved trauma, they also have difficulties in your capacity to have healthy relationships. This has an impact on it. Now, people who are able, and I also see couples in a lot of my work, and if I work with them to where they can create a safe space between each other. Okay. And a lot of times they cannot, because they were like, no one, I've learned that I can't trust anybody.
Mm.
No one was there for me to even want to hear what was going on with me. I'm not comfortable talking about my feelings and my needs because I never had practice talking about them. And so if your thoughts and feelings aren't important, you internalize that and you think, okay, I'm unimportant. And of
Mm.
course, you carry that forward into your interpersonal relationships. It's so important. And a lot of that is, will you be there for me when I really need you? Because I haven't had a history of this. I don't know what this looks like. I've been
Ooh.
taught terrible examples of what healthy relationships look like. So you think this is normal. And I'm like, no, we have to have respect for each other. We have to have care for each other. You got to be able to trust each other in this world. And we know that if you are able to have this with a significant other, if you are able to have this, you go out into the world way more confident. That's why happily married individuals with a healthy marriage, they make more money, they're more successful, they're happier, their kids are better for it. Like the Black community would be so much better if we really start raising awareness of all of these things that happen to us,
Come on.
understand that we got trust issues and we need to work it out through our significant other. Listen, I don't really, when I talk about trauma with a lot of my clients, I don't want to open up Pandora's box. We don't need to talk about everything that's happened to you. We just need to talk about the things that are impacting what you're going through right at this moment, because I know a whole bunch of things have happened, but let's just talk about the things that are coming up for you and how it's getting in the way. It's a block for you to be able to develop. And people have mama issues and daddy issues. We have entire platforms where all they do is bash women. All they do is bash men. And I hope my little platform is able to put some compassion and some grace back into Black male and female relationships with each other. It is a hard, tough battle, but that's something that I'm really, really like passionate about, very passionate about that piece in my of my work.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I said, I
Mhm.
know that that takes a toll. Poverty
Did
takes a
not.
toll on
Yes.
relationships, and so and I love how you broke down because when you are living in poverty, you feel like you're by yourself. You feel like you can't
Mhm.
trust anybody, and in order to be in a healthy relationship, I mean, trust is a huge part of that. And so, absolutely. So let me ask you this: do you feel like people who are impoverished tend to be very self-centered?
You know, um, naturally you would think that, but it was interesting. I just happened to be, I was somewhere in my old neighborhood actually, and I was checking out or whatever, and I was just kind of like being funny. And I said, oh, you can pay for my food too. I think the conveyor belt, like you know
Mhm.
how if you don't put the divider in there, that your items go with their items. I said, oh, you can pay for my stuff. And this lady, she looked back at me and she said, yeah, I pay for it. She said, but I only have money for like this and this. I can't pay for all of it. And I was like, oh, lady, please, I don't need you paying. I was just cracking a joke, but I was really overwhelmed by how generous she was. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I want to say that those who don't have anything tend to hoard, but I don't know. I have gotten lots of generous, very generous response. So I would have to say, I think it all depends on the situation, but um, it's very fascinating to see how people who have nothing, how compassionate they can be to others and want to give. Yeah.
Yeah, so the reason why I asked because I had a friend growing up, actually a few friends, but I'm thinking about one in particular. He we used to hang out a whole lot. And I would notice that when he didn't have money, like my friends, we would all like pool our money together to do things like get up in the club because he was always the one. He probably was like, I heard you on there talking about me. But when we were teenagers and we wanted to go to this club down in downtown Baltimore City, of course, before we went to the club, what do we want to do? We want to eat, we want to drink, and he didn't have the money, the means to do that. And so we will pool our money together and we say, all right, well, this weekend, are you going to pay for him to get in, or this weekend are you going to pay for his food, or and so as we got older, and he began to work and accumulate his own money, I remember he was a little selfish. He would have money and then he wouldn't want to spend it. And so he and I like we had a heart to heart one day, and he's like, for me, I've been so used to not having
Mhm.
that when I do get, I want to keep it. He said, and he apologized to me. He was like, I'm sorry. He was like, you're right.
Mhm.
He said, you all have always been so giving of me, giving, but he said, I don't know what it is. And he actually had to think about it. And when he thought about it, he came back and he said, that's what it was. He was just like, I was so, he's like, I'm used to not having. So when I get, I want to keep. I don't want to give it away. I want to keep it because I don't know when the next time I'll have it, or when I may lose it. And so that was his mentality, and I guess I can't make that broad generalization. Like if you're impoverished,
Yeah.
you're just selfish. But
But
I was just wondering.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it absolutely makes sense because people think that trauma is like something major that happens to you, like it's a big time, a shooting or something like that. But it could be a series of little events. It could be a series of times where he was stuck and left without money and the lights got cut off. And, it was associated with a painful memory. The lack of money for this particular man, and for men in particular, we get these messages that you're not really a man unless you have money in your pocket. There are a
Mm,
lot of men in my family like, why aren't you dating anybody? And they're like, I gotta wait till my money's right, or I ain't worthy of having a girlfriend. And I'm like, well, I don't know about that. But you have these sort of incidents where there's shame attached to you not having money. It's very shameful to be poor too, not having something, or having your car break down and you're walking on the side of the road and you don't have enough money to get a cab or Uber. And what happens is that it destroys your sense of security because
mm.
that money helps you be secure and you can feel overwhelmed by a lot of your issues. So, yeah, I can totally see, depending on his association with money, which is a conversation he should have with himself. What is your association with money? And by the way, I do teach a class with Dr. Boyce, his prime students, and we talk about anxiety related to finances and trauma related to finances. I do a whole curriculum with his students there. And so, yeah, we get into all of that. And we also get into a place of healing because of that, so that you don't have these sort of barriers in your interactions with people. Absolutely.
And so where can people sign up for this class, Dr. Watkins?
Oh, it's drboyceprime.com.
drboyceprime.com, and they can sign up. And are these classes like live, or is it like a asynchronous course that you
He
sign up and
teaches
you
it.
pay?
He
Mhm.
teaches it every Thursday night, I believe. Yeah, he's probably going to be teaching a few minutes here. We'll be listening to him talk in the background.
Okay,
But
so you can hop in anytime and just
yeah,
join the class.
yeah, you can hop in anytime. He teaches it. It helps him when you have like secondary source of income based on stock options. It's a really kind of a technical class of how to do stock options. And then as a piece to that, I just volunteer. I just like, babe, tell me what you want to do, what you want me to do, and I do
Y'all are
it.
just y'all are just the cutest. Did I tell you that when
Oh,
you told me your love story? Remember when we were down
oh
at the
my
All
gosh.
Black National Convention and
Yes.
you were telling me the whole love, like we were literally at the party family, and
That's
I slid up on Dr. Watkins and I said, yeah, I've been meaning to see you and give you a hug, and she's like, yeah, I've been meaning to see you, and then we just started like just chopping it up. I'm telling her my story, she's telling me her story, and so she shared with me how she met Dr. Boyce Watkins and how they
crazy
fell in
story.
love and how they got married. And I said, you two are such the cutest, especially when you all do like your video talks or your pillow talks.
Pillow talk.
Your
Yeah.
pillow talks, and you all will put like the video out like, yeah, we were just talking about this was our pillow talk. And I say, you all are like the cutest couple, man, but and a power couple at that. I love what your husband does, and I love what you do. And so you all, I view you all as a power couple, but just a beautiful B1 couple, and a
Hmm.
beautiful example of what a healthy marriage looks like, right? Like
Yes.
what that looks like. And so, I mean, goodness gracious. But anyway, let me ask you this. So is poverty linked to, I know I was reading a book by Dr. Amos Wilson. It's called The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child. And in that book, he talked about how poverty is linked to low achievement motivation. So he's saying that, look, when you're impoverished, when you're living in poverty, a lot of people don't even, like you said, you have a poor reflection of yourself.
Mhm.
You have a poor self-identity. And so you feel like you can't achieve, like you won't be able to make it. So that's one. But he also said you also have a high dependency need. So he said that you tend to be very dependent. You have a dependent mindset. He said that is linked to poverty. And he also said that you have low extension need, meaning that, okay, you'll live in a community and you'll like throw a beer bottle outside, like you really don't even value where you live, right? He said you'll throw a beer can outside or you'll trash your environment because you have what's called low extension needs. So what are your thoughts about those three things that he mentioned in his book, The Developmental Psychology of the Black Child?
Yeah, I like this whole throwing your beer can out the window. I mean, you don't own anything. You don't own
Mm,
that. You don't own your house.
mm,
You're just renting. If
mm.
you're renting, you're not, you just live, you don't live in a community, you just live in a neighborhood. There's no sense of cohesion there. So it's just like, what's the point? What's the point of doing that? So yeah, I think like throwing the beer can out, there's no ownership there. Like you're not getting anything in my neighborhood. I'm like, wait, hold on, I don't want the house prices, but I don't want my value of my home that I own to go down. Let's keep it all nice and neat. I pay, association fees for my community and all of that
Same here.
to keep the, snowing outside right now, to keep everything nice and neat because I own it. I have a sense of ownership in that. So yeah, absolutely. That's another thing. And poverty has low achievement. What's interesting, well, first of all, thanks to Dr. Boyce, by the way. I ended up in my PhD pro. He was my math tutor when I was in college. Okay, so because I learned all this stuff about math and statistics, when I was going to get my PhD, I also got a master's degree in statistics. And we worked with the NAILS data, which is the National Education Statistics data. Very interesting because that poverty and achievement rates, we learned about it in our classes. And we were doing complex statistics in this class. And one of the most heavy things, and it was myself and a couple of other social work students, but we were looking at achievement. Now, this is national data. Our taxpaying dollars came to collect all the paid to collect all this data.
Mm.
And so one thing we found, controlling for everything, controlling for income, race, all of the things that could have an impact on childhood achievement, there was one factor that had the biggest effect size
Mhm.
on the outcome, and that was neighborhood effects.
Mm.
So whether a child would perform in school didn't have to do with funding, didn't have to do with race, didn't have to do with income. It had, well, kind of tied to income, was the neighborhood that you lived in had the biggest impact on childhood achievement. And we
Mm.
know that the neighborhood you lived in is really related to how much money you have in a kind of off-centered way. So absolutely, it has an impact on that. And even in related to trauma, what's happening is that if you are worried about where your next meal is coming from, if you're worried about whether you have shoes or what's going on in your household, if you have some household things and some issues related to poverty that you're worried about, and you have a sense of some history of trauma, when you come to school, you're going to look like somebody with ADHD.
Mm.
You're going to look like you're going to be hypervigilant, you're going to be startled, you're not going to be able to concentrate.
Dr. Wilkins, Dr. Wilkins. So do you think that is why a lot of our children get diagnosed with that? Like a lot of our
Misdiagnosed, absolutely. They're
misdiagnosed, not
misdiagnosed,
diagnosed, misdiagnosed. You're right.
misdiagnosed. They're
Because,
not asking the right
oh,
questions. They're not
wow.
asking the right questions. And the thing is that it's so curable because if you know that it's related to trauma, there's people like myself. I'm a clinical certified trauma professional. People like myself could come in and actually do some good intervention work with kids who dealt with this sort of thing. And then epigenetics, all of that, we could slice all of that out, and it can be better for the child to sit and concentrate because they're not worried about all of the things that they're going through environmentally, just walking from school to home, all of the things that can happen to them in the neighborhood, getting bullied and jumped and guns flown everywhere. You never know what these kids go through, and you expect them to come to school and be able to concentrate and read. Let me read this passage and take homework home and do my homework and all of these things. They're not going to be able to do that.
Not at all. Not at all. Ooh, I didn't even think when you said that. I'm like, oh
Mhm.
yes. So, but what they'll do is just say, let's put them on medicine.
Oh,
Let's put them on Ritalin, and let's just put them on medicine.
have you
And
seen a child on medication for ADHD when they don't need to be on it? They
mm,
look like zombies.
zombies. Yeah, 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 yeah. I've seen it.
They're
I've
just
seen it.
like staring off into space. It is terrible.
It is terrible. And like you said, instead of bringing someone like yourself in to send these children to counseling and to get them resources and to get
Mhm.
them help, I'm thinking counseling, make sure that they have food and clothes and that they're taken care of. The easier thing is to just say, let's just put them on Ritalin, and send them back to class.
Yeah, just
And
so they can zone out and the teacher can conduct the class without being having the disruptions.
mm,
Johnny's not walking around the classroom all day. Mhm.
absolutely. But then you do have some mothers who are impoverished. And I was told that some of them will take the child to the doctor and say, like, please diagnose my child with ADHD or some sort of learning disability so I can get a check.
The SSI
That's
check.
yeah,
Mhm.
that's very common. I know it happens in
Mhm.
Baltimore a lot, where you do have some mothers in town that'll say, like, that was like a hustle in Baltimore. They'll take the children and they'll get a doctor to write something up, and then now they're collecting a check, for that child. Um,
We as social workers, we like to call it being resourceful.
mhm.
We like to use a strengths model.
Okay, so you don't want to call it a hustle.
I don't want to call it a hustle. I want to call it resourceful. I mean, I'm sure
Resourceful.
Jeff Bezos has a lot of loopholes in his everyday life.
So you said it's
Come on.
resort. You said it's resourceful.
Yes, I like to call it resourceful.
So, but what happens to that child when
Oh
they're
yeah.
when they're hit with that label? Like
Yes.
what happens to that child, mentally and emotionally when now they're diagnosed with a learning disability or they're diagnosed with, ADHD, and then they go to school, they're in a certain program now. So mommy may get a check, for this child, but now this child that doesn't have a learning disability, now they're in the I don't want to say the slow class, but now they've put this child over here with these other students, like what does that do to the child? I think that that's traumatic.
Yeah, it can also be a crutch. It can be like, I don't have to do that because I got ADHD.
Oh, that's true.
It's in my IEP. I can't do it. If you have an IEP, they can't punish you for what's written in your IEP. Like it says that I don't
Mm,
concentrate. So you can't punish me for saying I don't concentrate. So it can be a crutch. But
mm,
again, I like to see it as something like, look, I can't say I would do any different if I was put in certain situations. Like I don't like to look at people's situation and judge them
right.
for being in a certain situation. I like to always, I don't justify what they're doing, but I always like to understand. Tell me what's going on that led you to do this.
Mm,
What is it? And I bet if you sit and listen to somebody, they will be able to explain it to you. So I don't think it's my job to judge other people and how it is. I always like to look at the big picture and say, okay, who we could spread blame to a whole lot of places can be blamed, but I just am never going to sign on to blaming Black mothers.
oh no, 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 no,
Yeah.
no.
So
Yeah.
I'm not going to sign on to that. But it's just unfortunate, of course. But I understand people
Yeah,
put in
absolutely.
these situations. You never know what you're going to do.
Yeah, when you're in crazy situation, you do crazy things.
You
You know
do
what I
crazy
mean?
things. It's
But
the
it's just
situation is
again,
crazy.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. But it's just in my mind, I'm thinking about that child who
Oh,
may be the next doctor, and now you have them over here because you
and
know.
they're not learning what they need to learn. And oh, yes, yes. Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's get into the trauma. I know I only have you for another 15 minutes.
Oh,
So
15 minutes.
let's get let's get into the trauma. Because I titled this Poverty and Generational Trauma. So let's talk about trauma now. And I know that I'm just sitting here thinking about that whole, like, we call it the Maafa, which is a Swahili word, which means the great disaster, right? A term that it's a great disaster. And it's a term that Nana Marimba Ani coined to describe the era of enslavement and colonization. And so during the Ma'afa, that whole era was traumatic for our people. And then we get over here on American soil and we experience, chattel slavery. That was traumatic. I mean, I'm seeing our families, ripped apart, being sold, women being abused, men being abused, women being lynched, men being lynched, children. I mean, all kinds of stuff. So that's traumatic. Then we get in this period of, reconstruction, right? So we become
Mhm.
emancipated. We get into that reconstruction era. And then we move from there into the Jim Crow semi-slavery era. And then you got the World War I, World War II. That here comes the policies that are creating
Oh,
Black poverty. That here comes the freedom movement, right? Which
or
was
the migration.
the Great
Migration
Migration.
from the south to the north, thinking
Yeah,
it's going to be better in the north, and it's
right,
way more traumatizing
right.
in the north.
You get traumatized. So I'm like that. Then after the civil rights movement and the Black Power movement, then we get hit with, drugs and then mass incarceration. And so all it's just
Yeah.
trauma after trauma
Yes.
after trauma that's being, passed down from generations. But it's like this trauma is compounding. And so I just ask you, how do we heal at this point, Dr. Watkins? Because I see we're traumatized people. I mean,
Mhm.
we never got a chance to breathe. Like,
Yes.
when have we had a chance in America to breathe? That's why when Trump, we're going to make America great again. A lot of Black folks was like, "Hey, when was America ever great for
Great
us?"
for us.
Because
Yes.
we never had a chance to breathe. And like I said, it's trauma that is being passed down from generation to generation, generation. And so I'm like, how do we heal? What needs to be done to heal from this trauma? I know earlier you mentioned the first thing is awareness, right? Identifying it and
Awareness.
recognizing it. So then, okay, if we recognize it and we're made aware of it, then how do we move in the direction of healing?
I also, awareness is definitely important, but also on the individual level, I think we all need to go home and we need to love the people in our families. We need to
That's where it
love the
starts.
people in our house, like for real. I've been so the wiser. I'm so happy that this whole situation with COVID and sheltering in place, I now teach online at my institution. I can now set up my classes on my computer over here, and I can be home for my children. Of course, that's what, I'm privileged to do, but I make sure that I take out time. So when my kids get off the bus and my kids come home, I'm going to create that safe space for them and say, tell me about your day. What's going on?
Same
What's
here.
happening? Tuning in, because all it takes to repair relationships, and it's all about repair. Let me tell you, when I work with couples, let me tell you, people in love will do traumatic things to each other, right? But it's the repair that makes sense. It's coming together and being able to be an empathetic person to them. So I really think that all of us today need to create a safe space for the people in our house. Okay, the people in your house, you have to tell them that you love them. You have to show them that you love them. You have to listen to what they say. And you have to say, okay, what can we do to make this better? We have to commit yourself to respecting each other, to making sure that you can trust each other, to be there for you when you need them. You need to be responsive. We need to be engaged with the people. I mean, I live in this suburb. My kids are going through things that are very unique that I never went through. So I have to be trying to understand what they're going through. I have to be understanding about what Dr. Boyce goes through every day and be a source of support for all of the stress that he's under, and then
Yeah.
myself and everything. And
Yeah.
so it is like, I'm just like, how can we all get together? So part of it is going back to our families, repairing things. We got Thanksgiving coming up. What are you going to be thankful for? How are you going to interact with people? And nothing's better than Thanksgiving, when you can just let your guard down and be yourself around people, for most of us. But it's not the case for all of us. And it's creating these boundaries of respect and understanding that if you fall below that, you need to apologize. There are people who think that they're just because I'm the mama, I can't apologize, or I'm infallible. No, so go back and love your family. It was definitely the one thing, giving your family that safe space where it can give some resilience. Because when you walk outside this door, there are terrible things that could possibly happen to you. There's painful memories that can happen, but it's going to be okay when you know that you have a place to go to that's going to help you process that and witness that. And of course, once you're with that, some of the things that you're doing, oh my God, Dr. Maya, I am like really fascinated with the things you're doing in Haiti. You're telling me about Haiti. All of that is on a community level of healing. I think a lot of these communities, especially with high crime and violence, it's nice to get a group of individuals together to say community policing, although that's kind of up and down about how effective some of that is, but it's still getting that social cohesion together where we can reclaim ourselves, reclaim who we are. And of course, people who follow Dr. Boyce, he gives a whole lessons on powernomics and all of that. I let him, that's his space. He can talk about that. All of the solutions are in a lot of the things that Dr. Boyce talks about, but it's also, we are a traumatized people, and we need to get ourselves back on board economically, but we also need to get ourselves back on board spiritually. I mean, to be traumatized so many years, generational, it has an impact on your spiritual development. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like, what?
Mm-hmm.
At one point, I remember thinking, why does God hate us? It's
Mm.
like, what's going on? And you start questioning your purpose in life, and you do need to get connected to that. And it has an effect on, your physical health, your emotional health, all of these things it has an impact on. But I have hope that we can do this with each other, and we can be resilient.
Absolutely. I mean, I have hope too. I remember this brother. Shout out to Brother Minister Saw from the Temple of New African Thought here in Baltimore. His message, since I've known him for about 8 years, and he's always talked about healing. He
Yeah.
was like, heal. We run around here talking about nation building, and we want to build a nation. We want to build a strong Black nation. He said, how are you going to do that with sick people? We need to heal. He said
Mhm.
that is what we should be focused on now, healing ourselves, healing our families, and then going out here and healing our communities. But he said it starts with yourself first. You got to heal yourself first. A lot of us don't even want to unpack that trauma that's inside of us. Dr. Watkins, go ahead. I think you want.
Yeah, because when you heal, that's where you get your sense of empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
Because being traumatized, it zaps your power away. For a lot of us, it just happens so suddenly sometimes. We're unprepared for
Mm-hmm.
an attack. So you do get your sense of it's so powerless to experience something unexpected. Okay, but when you start to heal, you start to feel better as a person, you get your power back. And so you can't pour into someone things that you never even had. Like, how are you going to pour into your children when you yourself are deprived? And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so you definitely need to really start from within. The war is from within for a lot of us. And we didn't start this way. I mean, you know, the history, we came from a very peaceful place historically in Africa, you know, when we were there. It's very peaceful. It was the things that happened to us. And this is the natural reaction. And that's another thing I want to say about trauma.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing wrong with the person who has been traumatized because
Mm.
your reaction to trauma is normal. It's a normal reaction to something that was abnormal. It never should have happened to you. So you have to believe that there's nothing wrong with you.
Mm.
Okay, there's nothing wrong with you because you experienced trauma. What you need to start thinking about is what happened to me, not what's wrong with me. And when you start thinking about it that way, like, oh, I'm responding to something traumatic because that's the way my body responds, my brain responds. It has an impact on your neurological system because it's
Yes.
put there to protect you.
Yes.
And really, that's the reason why our DNA has lived on. You know, me and you, we're here today because our ancestors somewhere knew how to adapt to the environment.
Mm. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Family, take a moment out to thumb up this video. I
Yeah.
see Aquarius 79 is in the building. She said, when you all come in, make sure that you thumb up the video. You know how the YouTube algorithm works. The more you engage with the video, the more it shows up in the engine or in the feed. So make sure you thumb up the video, family. Also, share this video. Sharing is caring. Okay. You came in here and all you did was soak up this good information, okay, that Dr. Watkins was spitting. You soaked up this good information. Go on and share it. Share it with the community. I wanted to have a special shout out to my Morgan State University students. Two of them dropped in, Logan Samuel and Makai Williams. He said he was in the lab. He said, Doc, we're in the lab working on your project, and you up here live streaming me. But you're supposed to be in the lab right now working on the project. But I do appreciate you all sliding through to listen to the discussion. And so, anyway, Dr. Watkins, do you have any closing words for the listening audience?
Yeah, I just think that again, I know I've talked a lot about safe spaces, but sacred space too. So you do need time for yourself. You do need some sacred space where you can create a time and some space where you can be introspective and start thinking about what you want in life and what your purpose is in life and to process all of the things that happen to you. You also need safe spaces so that you can invite people into your space that
Mm,
is um, you know, healing, someone who's not going to bring a whole bunch of chaos and stuff into it, a place where it's nice and peaceful because we all need our peace. Okay. And so it's starting from within and it's building out. And, you know, I'm hoping that we could, you know, somehow have a society, you know, of Black people. And I'm not going to wait on reparations. I know you went to the reparations. Were you at the reparations
yeah, yeah,
rally?
your husband and I, we both, your husband and I.
Y'all both
I
there?
spoke literally after he spoke, and I
Oh,
said, I
really?
saw when I saw him under the tent. I said, "What are you doing here?" He's like, I know. He's like, I had to show up for my people. I just had to be here. And he came through, and he spoke, lit it up, and stayed for a little bit, and mingled, took some pictures, and then he was like, he had to roll out. But we were both there, and yeah. So go ahead, Doc. Yeah, we
Yeah, I
both
mean,
there.
we're not gonna wait on we ain't gonna wait too much on reparations, you know. I mean, I think the biggest thing when we talk about healing as well, and I know you talk about epigenetics, how when your parents experience some trauma, that it has an impact on your cellular, it changes your cell, your DNA,
Absolutely.
it has a change on it. However, with therapy, with healing, you can also fix your DNA so that the next generation is not impacted by the trauma that your great great grandparents have gone through. So
Mm-hmm.
it is not like, don't give up and don't think that it can never ever be done. I really do think, and it doesn't have to be me. I'm a therapist, but just go to a therapist in your community or in your network or however you can go and seek help and be able to change not only your situation, but also for your household and for your grandchildren and for your great grandchildren. And, the answers are there. And so that's what I will leave people with, that you can get help, and it is very effective. Absolutely. Mhm.
Absolutely. Hold on. I got to
Yes.
drop a bomb for you. All right. So, Doc, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your energy, because you told me straight up. You was like, I don't work on Thursdays. You said, you said, I don't usually work on Thursdays. You said, usually my Thursdays and my weekends. You was like, I'm not doing it. So, but you said, I'll do it for you. You said, I'll come on for you. But you said, I usually don't work on Thursdays. So I do appreciate you, taking time, out of your schedule to be with us tonight. You dropped a lot of jewels, and you confirmed some things for me, because like I said, I have my little theories when I observe people. But again, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a therapist. I just kind of, look at some things. Is this linked to this, or is this connected? Because I believe that all of the behaviors that we exhibit, right, they come from somewhere. I don't think that they just show up out of the blue, right? So they're connected to something, whether it's good, whether it's bad, is connected to something. And so you answered a lot of the questions that I had. You also confirmed, a lot of things for me. And so I thank you so much, Dr. Watkins, from the bottom of my heart. And I know my listening audience, they thank you too. They're in the chat. They're saying thank you. They're
Thank
saying,
you.
I tried to make sure that on your end that you were able to see like a lot of the comments. So I just kept on
Oh,
kind
okay.
of showing. Yeah, I kept showing them so that you could see them. But a lot of the folks are saying, thank you. This was a wonderful discussion. And I appreciate the audience, sharing. A lot of people in the chat sharing their trauma. They're like, yeah, I was a latchkey kid here. I also went through neglect. A husband is in there. He's like, yeah, my wife, we've been together for 20 something years, and we fight, hard to just try to understand each other. And so
Mhm.
a lot of people were sharing their experiences in the chat as you and I were dialoguing. And so I thank you, family, for joining us tonight. What I'm going to do, family, is drop the link in the chat. I'm going to let Dr. Watkins go. I'm going to drop the link in the chat, okay, so that you all can come on in and share your thoughts about what you heard, or share your experience with us. All right. And so I'm going to play my outro. So don't leave, because some folks, Dr. Watkins, you play the outro and they hit the button, boop, they get off. So I'm going to play my outro, drop the link in the chat so you can come on in. And if you want to unpack your trauma, you want to talk about some things that you learned tonight, family, feel free to come in. Dr. Watkins, thank you so much, Queen, for coming in. I appreciate you, and make sure that you come back sometime.
Absolutely. I'd love to come back. Yeah, I mean, are you going to be talking to people after this about trauma?
Yeah, I was going, you going to hang?
I hang out with you. I
You
mean, I
hang
don't
out?
want to force myself on you,
No,
but
no,
I
no, yeah,
hang
yeah.
out with you.
Because I was like, I know you said he had something going on, and so I was like, okay, I didn't want to hold you
Oh,
up,
he's doing.
you know.
He's okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
he's okay. Okay. So let me play my little outro. I'm gonna drop the link in the chat for the people to just come on in and ask you some questions, okay,
Yeah.
and share their experiences. So here we go.
Let's combat and fight back with tracks. The war of the minds, they want control of the masses. And Common Core, they dumb us down in the classes. Without knowledge, we can't gain access. Build with the elders, take notes and write classes. We keep whining on the block, how it's gonna stop? Let's start supporting our own, make their supply drop. We buy stocks, then we buy blocks. Cause we know the truth and we tuned in to Dr. Maya.
All right, family. So we are back. Dr. Watkins says she's going to hang with us, family. So you could come on in. I just dropped the link in the chat. Come on in and ask a question right now. Share your story. We're curious to hear your story. I know that some people were talking and chopping it up in the chat, and so I've dropped the link in the chat. Go ahead and click on it and come on in and ask a question. You may feel some type of way or practice a behavior. Dr. Watkins, is this linked to this? Or
Yeah.
you may have some questions. And so the floor is open. The floor is yours. I'm just waiting for some folks to click the link and come on in. All right. We have our Queen Mother, Almina. She is in the building. You have the floor, Queen Mother. Peace and love to you, beloved. How are you?
Good evening. How are you?
Good evening, Queen Mother. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you, Dr. Watkins. Thank you, Dr. Ma'at. You sound like an awesome therapist. Just even keeled, straight to the point. And I I shared your sentiment because some time ago I heard Dr. Um, DeGruy also mentioned that about the PTSD. And after hearing her lecture she gave in the UK to social workers and about the remnants of that PTSD. And in retrospect, I found something very interesting within myself. Although I was not enslaved, my parents weren't enslaved, my grandparents weren't enslaved, but my prior progenitors were. And I did something that she talked about, and I said, wow, I did not know that's what I was doing. And quickly, what she said is that, someone could, compliment your child, and you'll say everything to tear your child down and what that really meant. And she said it's a way of trying to keep your child from being sold as slaves. Now, you know, that blew me over. I said, "You're kidding me!" Like I was trying to deflect my child's greatness of which I reared them. I want that to be seen, but I didn't. When I was, saying, "Oh no," kind of taking away her shine. That's exactly what I was doing.
Mm.
Yeah, what does she call it? Post-traumatic slave syndrome. Isn't
Yes,
that what she calls it?
yes.
Yeah, and it's, oh God, that hurt. When you hear stuff like that and then you see yourself in it, that kind of hurts, doesn't it? You're like, ouch.
To the core of your being,
And like,
especially
whew.
when you are not, it basically corroborates what you just said about the epigenetics.
Oh yeah, and it's, a lot of it is learned too. You kind of learn to kind of protect your child in some way. So yeah, so absolutely, and I think like I did hear her talk about that myself, and I felt on the spotlight, because I think I could see myself doing that with my own children, and I can't imagine what that does to them, and it makes them feel, like they're, like they shouldn't boast. I think in our community, it's just, there's something against like thinking that you're conceited or stuck up or all of that. Like
Mhm.
the biggest thing we want to be is like down to earth. Like we want to be
Right.
down to earth, and it really doesn't matter. So I think it's related a little bit to that. And it's sometimes like, how do you feel, Queen Mother, when someone says something really complimentary about your child? Like how do you feel? Do you feel like really uncomfortable?
Um, I did, to be honest. Although I reared my children for the very fact of being proud of themselves and their achievement.
Mhm.
And when I see it come to fruition, I'm almost afraid for them because I think certain people get quickly intimidated by any measure of greatness that our children have. And according to statistics, our children, they could be as young as 2, and they're looked as if they're made. They make them seem older than what they are.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that was a way of, to me, a form of protection, as odd as that may seem. In retrospect, that's what I've basically assessed it. My behavior in trying to take away my daughter's shine from
Mhm.
her was like, I don't want these people to have a ill feeling towards her, and because it's their problem, not our problem. So
Mhm.
why would I need to do that? Why do I feel the need to do that? All of my children's, their hard work and their stick to itiveness. Why am I depriving them of what, and they should be proud of? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you're trying to protect them. So I remember, my dad also has a PhD, right? And when I was at Florida State getting my doctorate, he came to my house and he was like, first time he came to visit me when I moved to Tallahassee, he's like, you are living like, he told me that I was living like a white suburban woman because
Oh
I was
wow.
married and I had a
Right.
son. I only had one child at the time. And he was like, you're living the lifestyle of a suburban, you're living the lifestyle reserved for white women. And
Wow.
and he made that comment. He looked me dead in the eye. He said, don't let anybody from that university know where you live. He said he was protecting me. He said,
Right.
don't you dare let anybody know. He said they because my husband was an engineer and he was making all this money. I was married at the time to
Right.
not Dr. Boyce, but someone else. And he was
Right.
like, they ask you what your husband does for a living, just be like, oh, he travels for work. He said, give them very little.
I do the same thing.
And he's like, don't let the white folks know what's going on with you. And don't let them know. He said, and I was like trying to buy a new car. He said, better keep that old little car. Make it seem like you're just, I mean, he was protecting me because
Right.
he saw where if you try to boast and you try to say, I got money and I got all this and I don't really have to work because I was turning down teaching. They would come because I would be like a teaching assistant, and I was
Right.
turning them down because I was like, I just want to get my degree and get out of here. I don't need to be
Right.
anyone's TA. I don't need that little
Right.
$2,000 check or whatever. He said, don't you dare boast. He said, you lay low and get your degree and out. And by the way, it was five when I went to that university. I'm calling them out. There was five of us. There were five Black students
Wow.
at that university. I was the only one that graduated.
Wow. Why do you think that is, Dr. Watkins?
Race. Racism.
No,
Mm.
I thought I was expecting a different answer.
Yeah, that's what it
Or,
was. Those were very capable individuals. Those other four people in my doctorate program were very capable.
wow.
But
What
it,
my husband told me about in his master's program that there were white students, specifically white females, that were getting A grades, but when it came to the application, because he has a master's in computer science, he says they couldn't do the work. And when they were, actually obtained positions, they were quickly fired because they couldn't do the work. So they were getting passed and getting A's from professors based off of what, not
let
because of
me
their
say, I can
merit.
talk until the cows come home about what happened in my.
Mm.
I don't even know if Dr. Maya wants me to talk about all of that. But at one
Mm.
point, I was like, maybe if I dye my hair blonde, I'd get some more attention. I used to make funny
Wow.
comments like that.
Or
But
take
oh
you
yeah,
seriously
oh
for
yeah,
one.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Watkins.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much, Queen Mother. I mean, appreciate you coming on and sharing your experience and asking your question. Brother Brendan, brother, unmute your mic. You have the floor, brother.
Hey, Dr. Mahat, and hey,
Peace and
Dr.
love.
Watkins.
Hi there.
So I guess adding on to that, I do have a couple of questions that I took some notes. I missed the entire conversation. I was busy doing other stuff, but I heard you were talking about trauma. And as a young person, there seems to be a culture of self-depreciation
Mm.
and self-sabotage.
Mm.
Um, that leads to what I would say is a difference between fear of failure and fear of success today. And I wanted to know what are some steps to take it. Like me personally, I don't have those quirks, but I just want to know because I see it a lot, and especially like around people my age is like, bro, you have the skills, but you continually self-depreciate yourself, and that causes you to, I've seen it.
Yeah, it's this sense of feeling that you're not worthy. You're
Hmm.
not worthy of whatever your goal is. And I mean, it is, I'm gonna tell you, it's a very living this life. I want to I could talk a little bit about spiritual stuff. I'm heavy into metaphysics. I'm heavy into spirituality. I don't
Hmm.
know, Dr. Maya, if you want to do a show on metaphysics, I'd love to come talk about that. That'd
Let's
be
do it.
wonderful.
Let's do it. Let's do
I'm
it.
just
Let's do it.
itching to talk about some of these topics because that was where a lot of people have transformation
Yeah.
in realizing and understanding your worth, your
Yes.
self-worth,
Having
think
agency.
of, anything that you think of, you have to realize that's what you're supposed to do because that's what's been placed in you. If
Yeah.
if it comes to you in your head, and you have to know that you're worthy of it. And it happens with a lot of successful people too.
Yes.
They feel like they what is it called? It's called your grief. It's what is it? Successful people feel bad about the fact that they're successful. I can't remember the name of it. It's remorse. Winner's
Mm-hmm.
remorse. You have
Mm-hmm.
remorse because you just feel like you haven't earned it. When really you put in a lot of the work and you do earn success. And people who self-sabotage, I mean, it's kind of frightening Because sometimes you walk around and you're used to, well, I can't do this because of this. You have like a reason to blame. Well, I could have started my business, but I was waiting for the LLC and I didn't get the letter in the mail. Like, it's always nice to have excuses, and those excuses protect you. You know, there's people I talk to all the time. Imposter syndrome. Thank you. Imposter syndrome, where you just feel like you don't deserve what's given to you, and that is a reflection of the post-traumatic slave syndrome as well.
Mm,
So,
okay.
yeah, very good, Brendan.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's yeah, that's very interesting. I just wanted to know because it seems like it did have some major roots because I see it a lot in my peers, and it's like, where did that stem from? Because you guys are very good at literally everything you do, but you keep yourselves confined to this small or basically like arena. And then like as soon as I get them to take agency of their being, right, and then finally break out of that shell, they're now very successful at what they do.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. So thank you, brother Brendan, for your question. That's my young warrior right there, Dr. Watkins. Beautiful.
Okay.
He just actually relocated. You said, are you in Silver Spring, Brendan, or
Yeah,
where
I'm
are
in
you
Elk
right?
Ridge.
You're Elk Ridge, Maryland right now. So he's supposed to be coming up to Baltimore. I told him maybe this Saturday or next Saturday to show him around. So where are you from, brother Brendan?
I'm from Lakeland, Florida.
From Florida. Okay. Oh man.
Mhm.
So I mean, I know you got up here. It's getting
Oh
cold
no,
now.
I hate it. I absolutely
I
hate it.
I, I knew it.
Absolutely hate it.
I was thinking about you. I said, man, I know he's probably like, man, it's too cold up here. 36 degrees already, and you're not used to this weather, are you?
Nope, I'm used to winters of 75 and 80 degrees.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Not in Maryland, man. And it's gonna get cold. So you invest in the coat, brother, and layer
Oh, I
up.
got lots of
So
them.
appreciate you coming on, brother Brendan. And go ahead and inbox me on Instagram. I know we said about this Saturday or next Saturday. So let's coordinate definitely a day and time to link up, okay?
All right, cool.
All right, brother Brendan. You take care, brother.
You too.
Danielle Scott. King, I saw you in the chat, warrior. Unmute your mic and go ahead and speak your mind.
Peace, family. Peace, family. I just
Peace.
saying about imposter
Yes, peace. Yeah, you said it.
syndrome
Imposter syndrome.
because I
Mhm.
I definitely have been a person who is self-sabotage for sure. Yes, yes. But I just want to say thank
Mm.
you to Dr. Maad and Dr. Watkins for especially talking about the boomers because my grandmother, I grew up in a very close-knit family, and I definitely saw the hoarding tendencies of my grandmother. And me, my mother, and my aunt, we would have a lot of conversations about not necessarily what they did wrong, but where they felt as though they were doing certain things to better me and my cousins' upbringing that we saw and the differences that they saw. And we talked a lot about how my grandmother is as a grandmother compared to how she was as a mother. And just to see the difference in how, like you guys were saying, the difference in how the boomers raised their children and how that is a microcosm of how your generation, Dr. Mott, raised their children.
Yeah, I think, brother Danielle, with my generation, we definitely pulled from um, the boomers, absolutely, because they raised us. So we definitely took some things. But I think with my generation, we saw, and I don't want to sound judgmental. We kind of saw, for lack of better words, the error in their ways. And so what we said was just like what they
Mm-hmm.
saw with their parents. They did it this way. So when I have my child, it's like every generation. So when I have my child, I'm going to do it differently. So, with the boomers, a lot of us we talk about this all the time, my cousins and I, and even some of my friends, we talk about how we were like beaten to submission. You didn't have a voice, not in the boomer's house. You do what I tell you to do. You don't ask any questions. You don't express your feelings. You do what I tell you to do. And if you don't do it, you see that black leather belt over there? I'm going to whip your behind. And so that was our upbringing. You better go to school and you better go to church. Go to school and get good grades, get a good education, and go to church every Sunday. Make sure you keep your room clean. And yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Eat this dinner that I give you, and that's it. I mean, that was the bulk of it. And so, with my generation, when we grew up, we were like, man, I mean, I don't know about this. Our generation, we created a space, for your generation. I don't know how old you are, Danielle. How old are you, Danielle?
22. 22.
Oh, yes. Yes. So we created a space for you all to use your voice. A lot of people say
Oh,
that your
absolutely.
generation, yeah, a lot of people say that your generation is the most fearless generation.
Mhm.
You all speak your mind, but you know why you did that? Because our generation said, you know what? Let's talk. Talk to me. You have a voice in this house. I asked my son Jalen, I can get his butt to come up here right now. I asked him, I say, Jalen, when we go to the market, what do you want us to buy? What do you want to eat? What do you want for dinner? You know, and he says, well, I have a craving for this, or I have a craving for that. In a boomer household, you didn't tell what you wanted for dinner. If I'm making spaghetti, you're gonna eat the spaghetti. If I'm making chicken tonight, that's what you're gonna eat. And so when we started raising our children, raising you all, our parents were looking at us saying, you're giving them too much freedom. You actually ask him, yes. We include him in the decision making in our household. Well, he's not paying the bills, but he's still included in the decision making in our household. We make sure that we take him on vacation with us.
Oh,
We were in a house.
So
The
much.
boomers were. So it's like you all. We a lot. I really pat our generation on the back because you all are fearless. You all know that you have a voice and you're not scared to use your voice. But that is because we saw some things that happened in our upbringing and we wanted to make sure that you all did not experience those things. Just like with our parents, there were some things that their parents did. For example, my mother said, well, you didn't have to work when you went to college. And she said, and you know why? I said, why? She said, because I made sure of that. She said, I remember when I was going through college, well, high school and college, she said, I had to work. So she said, I made sure that you and your brother, when you all were growing up, that you didn't have to take a job. And so each generation, we have our thing and we have the things that we want to improve. And that's what we do, even down to getting jobs. You know what we realized, Danielle? The baby boomers, their way out of the ghetto or the hood or whatever, their way out was education and a
mhm.
good job,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
And so we were like, they told us, get a good education, get a good job. And then so we went to college, we got a good education, got a good job, and then we realized, wait a minute, this isn't
It
enough.
was
So
not
we
at
started
all.
our generation, exactly. So our generation started pushing entrepreneurship. We were like, man, I mean, the baby boomers said, go to school, get a job. We're saying, go to school and create jobs. So we're evolving that philosophy. And so I tip my hat off to the 70s and 80s babies. But Dr. Watkins, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, that is so true. And it is not fair because college wasn't as expensive back then as it is
Well,
now.
that's true. That's
Like
true.
you would graduate from college and you just have a couple of $1,000 in debt. It took you nothing to pay it off. Like my dad, he got his master's degree. I don't think he paid anything for it. So things were way more affordable back then. And so now we were told go to college and get a good education, and then we're finding that we're working our way up to middle management and it's a glass ceiling. And we're looking at like what are we gonna do, and and so people just get like, screw it, let me just start my own business.
That's what happened.
And I'm telling you, that's where the money is, starting your own business. My university job, yeah, the insurance is great and I got great ti
Same,
what-
same here.
craft is TIA is gone, right? It's just craft at this point. Craft is being good to me, by the way. Craft is good to me. And so, that's what it's there for, but my money comes from my business. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Likewise. We don't make anything in academia. You know that, Dr. Watkins. We don't
No
make enough
money
of
at
it.
all.
Yeah, we ain't making no
It's
money in academia.
prestigious, though. I can say I'm a full professor of social work.
That's hot. I will one day want to become a full professor. I'm not a full professor yet, but that's hot.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah.
know you made full professor.
I
That's
sure
hot.
did. Mhm.
Congratulations. That's a big deal.
It is a
That
big
is a big
deal.
deal, man.
I'm the
Okay.
only Black female faculty that's a full
Wow.
professor at that university.
Wow. Brother Danielle, did you want to add anything else, King, before I moved on?
Yes, I just want to say one more thing. You're absolutely right about your generation allowing us to have a voice, because that was my mother's biggest thing. She made sure that I was heard. To the smallest thing down to what do you want to eat for dinner. But I remember so many times of me just expressing myself and her literally taking heed to what I was saying and moving to action with what I was saying. Like I remember one time I was really young and I jokingly made a statement about saying that I wanted to harm myself, but it was because I wanted to get out of something. But she took it to heart and she said, "No, we're gonna take you to talk to someone and work through this because that isn't something that a 10-year-old or however old I was should be saying." So she just hearing this and him saying, "Oh, it's just so I can get out of this and go further." And absolutely, I will definitely agree that your generation has given my generation a voice, and
Ash.
it has been nothing but transformative for me.
Is that your baby?
Yes, this is Jalen. Say hello. Let me get Jalen.
Hey, Jalen.
Say hi, Jalen.
Hello, how are you doing?
How are you? How old are you?
I'm 12.
You're 12. I got a 12-year-old. Her name is
Surprised me.
Tay Tay.
Whoa.
She's at dance class right now.
Oh,
She's on
okay.
the dance team. So
So we
Whoa.
so we were talking about like
yeah.
our generation creating a space for you all to have a voice. Do you feel like you have a voice in our household?
Yes, I do.
So what do you mean? Like when you say you have a voice, do you get to
Like,
you get to decide on some things and
yes, I do.
you get to express yourself?
Yes.
And do you feel like it's a safe space for you to express yourself?
Yes.
And do you think that was priority for your parents to make sure that we created this space for you?
Yes.
All right. Anything else you want to say to the audience or
No, well, have a good day.
Nice to meet
all
you, Jalen.
Nice to meet you too.
right. All right, close the door for me, man. Yeah, so our generation didn't. Yeah, thank you so much. So we didn't play, and his generation, it's just going to get better and better each generation.
Yeah, my mom used to say, "I'm not a short order cook. I'm not trying to cook on." This is what's on the menu today.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's why to this day I hate spaghetti. Anybody that knows me know that I hate spaghetti. I hate spaghetti because that was something that we ate all the time. And my mother said, "Well, I used to feed it to you all because it was cheap to make
Yes.
and it was filling." So to this day, everyone knows I don't like spaghetti, but like I said, we didn't have a choice. You eat what's on your plate. And so anyway, brother Danielle, thank you so much for coming in, King. We have two more people, and then I gotta let Dr. Watkins go. All right, family, because we'll be on here all night. All right, so brother Gerald Mix, you have the floor, King.
Can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear, warrior.
Okay, I don't first I want to thank the doctor for her information, and I grew up in the same kind of condition. I'm 71 years old now, and I grew raised in project housing, and I know what it is to I just stayed to myself a lot because I didn't trust people, and the condition when you don't never hear your father, tell your mother I love you, or your mother tell your father I love you, and uneducated, he didn't go to school, he worked hard. But what I did, uh, I learned one thing, when I was coming along, like if when we integrated, and I got real good grades when I was in all black school, but when we integrated, my grades started going down, and my parents, but my siblings, call me dumb and stupid, and but what I did when I got in the seventh grade, I said I had to reprogram myself. I said I'm not dumb and I'm not stupid.
That's right.
And when I got married, I told my wife, when I was married, I said, you ever call none of these children dumb, and don't ever call them stupid.
That's right.
I found out whatever you put in the child, that's the way they're gonna act.
That's right.
And it doesn't matter where you come from, the projects or you come from wealth. It's what you taught in the home. And I thank you for this, because I asked a question online when you talking about healing, and I asked a question. I said, well, do we heal the past first and then we can heal the future?
I think healing the past is nice, but I think you should think about healing in terms of just today, taking
Okay.
one day at a time.
Okay.
Don't worry about the future. Don't worry too much about the past. And it's funny, as a therapist, I'm saying don't worry too much about the past.
That's what I was just thinking, like, okay.
Just worry about like what is going on for you right now, and stay, stay really in tune with the here and now. Okay. And some things from the past may come up in that moment, and then you deal with it in that moment. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not someone, I think I said it earlier, where you don't need to open up Pandora's box on everything.
Yeah.
It's the
Mm,
things that are pressing. And of course, the past is not the past. Everything is present. So just the things that are going for you right in this moment, and in every single moment, stay present in that moment. Okay.
Okay.
And so, because on a metaphysical level, there is no past, there is no future. It's just you in this moment right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so
mm.
I think that when you stay in that, that's when a lot of the healing, because you can carve out, you're limitless. You can do anything you ever want to do or even
Mm-hmm.
thought about doing. Who cares? 71 years old. How old do you think you are?
Who, me?
Yes.
I'm a recycled teenager.
There you go. You are a teenager. That's what
I
matters.
love it. I love it. I love it,
I'm a
brother Jerry.
recycled teenager. I tell my ain't nothing old but money and clothes.
That's right. That's right. So you
But
are
I
what
want to say
you
this.
do.
This is my first time. I didn't. I was messing up. I didn't know how to get into, but I finally got in. But when you spoke about with ADHD, okay, I got 5 grandchildren. Not five, 7, 5 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. My oldest granddaughter's 15. My oldest grandson is 16. But my baby man, he's 7. And when he was in kindergarten, they wanted to diagnose him with ADHD, what they call it. And I
Mhm.
told my son, don't you let them folks diagnose your son with nothing. There's nothing wrong with that boy. He just energetic. And I said, and you as the father, you spend time with him. The little boy, he's so gifted. He played drums, and when he beat, I never seen a child that young. Even when he was just 2 years old, he can keep rhythm. And I
Mm,
told him, I said, that boy is gifted. I said, he hearing stuff in the universe that you and I don't hear.
mm.
And I told him, I said, work with him. I said, because if you let them do that and start giving him medicine, I said, some written and all that's nothing but a low grade of crack.
Dope.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I told him,
Mhm.
I said, and then that will follow him from kindergarten to his adult life. I said, it goes to the FBI file. They put him in the system. I
Mhm.
said, and then when they know who he is and they pull him over, they're already expecting trouble. So he wouldn't let him do it. So I told him, I said, the problem is he don't like his teacher. Well, he didn't, you know how our children are. They don't believe nothing you say. They think you just got here last night.
Right.
And he told me, he said, when he took him to school for first grade, he said, Daddy, you was right, because when Aiden seen that teacher, he started running. I said, didn't I tell you that? I said something about her he didn't like, you know. And now I'm gonna talk about this. By you talking about we had the mustard sandwiches and mayonnaise sandwiches
Yep.
and
Yep.
spaghetti
Sugar, the
sandwiches
sugar sandwiches
Or
and
a
and
and
wish
and
sandwich. Remember the wish
uh,
sandwich? You wish
huh?
there was some meat in there.
Yeah,
said
we
a
had
wheat
one.
sandwich.
The
We
wish
had them
sandwich.
ass sandwiches. But my mother used to tell us all the time. Said we were poor and didn't even know it. We just try to enjoy life. But I don't regret my raising. I don't think I remember when my father whooped me so bad, and something I did I shouldn't have done it. But he whooped me so bad for about a half hour, and it bothered me for a long time. But then I made my mind up. I said, I will never whoop a child like that as long as I live, because that was, and I think a lot of his were just angry because he was coming along. His mother, they wouldn't let him go to school, and because he's born in 1910, so you know what he come through. And but he always told us, he said, you got to work for everything you want in this world, because nobody's going to give you anything. And I'm just highlighting some stuff that you said. And when you said that your daddy told you about when you got that house and don't tell him this and tell him that, I
Mhm.
told my son the same thing. He bought a $200-some-thousand home. I said, let me tell you something. Don't you go on that job and mention nothing about what you bought. I said, don't even put it in the paper. But the realtor put it on Facebook. And when they found it out, I said, now what they gonna do? They're gonna try to build a paper trail on him. That's what they did. They tried to fire him.
Mm.
But I stayed in his ear, So I thank you for, I enjoyed the show. So I'm signing off.
Well,
Mr.
we
Gerald, I love
appreciate you.
it. Yeah,
It's the
Okay.
what you're talking about is this is called healthy paranoia.
Hmm.
Healthy
Mhm.
paranoia. So I just want to leave it that. Thank you for the healthy
Oh,
paranoia.
okay.
It's a
Okay.
survival
Thank you.
mechanism.
That's right.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank
Bye bye.
you. Peace and love. Peace and
Bye.
love. Watch, talk, act. Watch, talking, act. Yeah. Watch, talk, and act. You have the floor, family. You can unmute your mic, brother. You have the floor.
Dr. Ahmad and Dr. Watkins, how you feeling?
Feeling good, brother. How about yourself?
I'm all right. I have a question for both of you. Dr. Ahmad first. Do you feel that we suffer from poverty because we have an impoverished mind?
I think poverty creates an impoverished mindset. And so, but then we didn't create poverty, right? And so,
Correct.
yeah, and so I have been studying. I'm a student of history, so when I answer questions, I always go back to history. So we know that Black poverty was created. It was created by our government. It was created, okay. But because we have been impoverished, we have adopted a mindset that is linked to our impoverished situation. Absolutely,
Perpetuated.
absolutely, and we perpetuate it. Yes, sir.
And then Dr. Watkins. I have a sister, not little sister, but a woman that I know, and she works in Hollywood, but she has a complex about color. And every time we discuss things, it's like she can't get over the fact that she's brown skinned. She calls herself light skinned. And I'm trying to help her through that, but there's nothing I can really say or do. And I don't know what to say to make her realize that she's just a brown skinned woman.
Uh,
So is she? So is she lighter than a paper bag or darker than a paper bag? Is that what? Is that what's the issue?
Let's just say she's not your color. She's a little bit lighter than me on my photo and on the
Okay.
icon. But her light skin looks, from what I see, it looks like it was lasered.
Oh,
I'm not trying to be mean, but
yeah.
that's what it looks.
Yeah, you know what?
wow.
I actually colorism came up for me when Dr. Mayat, when you were talking about all the different aspects of racism that we've gone through over time. I do
Yes.
think about it's almost like not only is it a sin to be born poor, but we have been given this label like it's a sin to be born Black.
Yep.
And I remember, like, my mom was a school teacher, and she was telling me about how she was teaching this. I think it was a third or fourth grade class, and she said there was a Black girl in her. This is a multi-race class, and she said it was a Black girl, little girl in her class, that just all of a sudden just started crying. And
Mm,
my mom just took her out to the hallway, and she said, "Well, what's going on? What's happening?" And she was just like, I hate my color. I
mm,
hate the fact that I'm so Black. And she
mm,
said, I really wish, I pray every day that I wouldn't be this color. And my mom's like,
mm,
why? What's going on? She was like, the people tease me, they make fun of me because I'm dark and all of that. And my mom had to do a pep talk with her in the middle of the hallway. Honey, you are beautiful. You are Black.
mm,
You're beautiful. You go back in that classroom. You hold your head up high. You whatever, just really giving her a pep talk about who she is. But I mean, she just felt like just
mm,
being born dark, it was almost like a curse to her. And it was just like when my mom told me that story years ago. I mean, that stuck with me, about how
mm.
we do internalize some of these terrible images in the media. We really need to have our own media and
Absolutely.
and just turn this other stuff off. But yeah, that's definitely one of the side effects of all of the traumatic situations and messages that we get about who we are. And this is bad. I think that whoever it is in Hollywood, I can't imagine what it's like living in California. I mean, everywhere I go in California is nothing but beautiful women. I don't know why. You throw a rock and you hit like a really beautiful woman in LA at least. And so I know it's a lot of pressure on people who live there to look a certain way. Like all of my friends that moved to Los Angeles, they all feel like they want to lose weight and get all skinny and glamorous and stuff like that. So the pressure that's put on them in Hollywood is just tremendous.
Mm.
And it would be really nice to know from her just how aware, of course, awareness is important to say, like, what would it mean to you if you were really light? Like, why is that important to you? I'm sure there's a story that she could tell, a very painful memory that's
Hmm.
attached to her color. And that's cool. Is this your lady friend? Then maybe you could be a safe space for her.
I do. We have, plenty of conversations, and I want to get her to realize why black people go through what they go through. It's very unfortunate situation, but she says she just can't relate to our struggle because of how she grew up, class wise. You know,
Mm.
she comes from a pretty prestigious family. I mean, she says she's never really been around black folk like that. But me being from Oklahoma, I was called the N word to my face, and I understand what it is. So, it's we come from two different sides of the spectrum, and
Mhm.
it it's very frustrating, some of these conversations. Sometimes she hangs up on me. I think it's childish, but we,
Well, she's
I
hanging up on you
tolerate it.
because she feels like you're not validating her experience, even though it's different. Like, I really think that, I mean, just because you came from different backgrounds doesn't mean she can't be the one for you. Watch, talk, and act. You can be
No,
like,
she's a great person, but I would never date her. I feel
oh, you're
like
not trying to date her. But even if you were, you never know what could happen. Even if you were, I mean, I think she just wants some validation. She wants to be
Mm.
heard. She don't want you judging her because she can't relate to the black experience. She stay
Mm.
out there long enough, she'll know. The world
Yeah,
will show her.
that's right. The world will show you
Mhm.
quick, fast, and in a hurry. And so, watch, talk, and act. Do you have any other questions, brother, before we let you go?
um blah, blah, blah. Do you feel like out of the sexes, right? Who do you feel struggles with colorism the most, men or women?
Oh, I never measured it. So I'm one of those type of people. And I guess this is me with my engineering hat on. When people ask questions like that, it's like, okay. And then, someone throws out an answer. My retort to that would be, okay, so where's your quantitative data, right? Your qualitative or quantitative data. Like, how did you measure that? And so my answer, just as an engineer, I would say, I don't know because I've never measured it. You understand what I'm saying,
Right.
brother Watch Talk? So the only way I would be able to measure it is based on my personal experiences, right, with the men, with the males and females that I know, right, with the men and women I know. But that necessarily, I can't make that. I can't determine that based on just who I know, right? We have like 48 million black people in the U.S., so I couldn't tell you, oh, more women struggle with colorism than men, or vice versa, because that's nothing that I've ever I've never measured that. But Dr. Watkins, what do you think about that? So I would say I don't know, brother. I would say I
Who
Okay.
don't know.
struggles with color? Like, what do you mean by that? Say more
I
about it.
mean, do you feel like colorism affects women more or men more? Because I would say this
Hmm.
lately, and especially here on YouTube, you hear about these people who talk about passports. Do you feel like they're looking for a specific type of person that's further away from their African being, or do you feel like it's just a thing? I mean, do you feel like these black men and women are going against each other, more or less? I mean, what is it? Is there a certain percentage you could think of that's causing them to drift apart?
Yeah, I do want to interject just really quickly while Dr. Watkins thinks about that. Like,
Hmm.
I've seen it on both ends, brother. Like, I've
Mhm.
seen some men who are like, I want a baby that looks like this, and I want a woman, that whole foreign thing. You know how they promoted it in the music. I want a foreign, so
Hmm.
they really put like racially ambiguous women on a pedestal. So I've seen that in like hip hop culture songs. I got songs for days. I want the red bone. I want the biracial or the whatever. Like, so we see that going on like in music, and you see it in the music videos. Because I remember I used to watch, like, if you watch 90s hip hop videos and then
Hmm.
watch today's hip hop videos, in the 90s, you saw women who were straight up black. Like, it was no question these were sisters. But then if you look at the videos today, you see, you know, a lot of racially ambiguous women. Like, is this a Hispanic? Is she mixed? Is she this? I don't really know. You know what I mean? And so I've seen it on both ends. So I've seen the men push it, but I've also heard on the flip side, females say, well, I want a baby that looks like the light skin, curly hair, the baby looks like this. So I've seen it on both ends. I've even had male friends of mine, beautiful men, told me, one was my student and another one, he's like a Bob in our family. Both of them, beautiful men, told me that, you know, that women didn't date them when they were younger because they were too dark. You know, so I've heard it on both sides. So that's why I said I can't really say, oh, well, more men suffer from it than women, because I've heard it on both sides, man.
My sister, she had that same mindset. She wanted a specific looking type of child because she hated herself that much, the
Mm,
Africanness of herself that much.
mm,
But even growing up, we grew up around studying the witness faith. We never were witnesses.
Mhm.
But if you look at the illustrations and things like that, in paradise, they have all these white folk and maybe one black person that looks that looks like a biracial or something like that, some weird looking thing.
mm,
And you don't see yourself, and then you're looking to this white Jesus and this white God.
come on.
Yeah, we need to start challenging some of these ideas. We need to start challenging that. I do think colorism is real.
Absolutely.
Definitely, definitely, colorism is out there. I'm not one of those people that's gonna say that it isn't, but it
No,
definitely.
absolutely.
And I know how I'm treated. I'm treated differently because my children are darker, and I know how I'm treated differently from how my children are treated. So I can see it, and we talk about it. You know, with my kids and stuff. My kids are much darker than I am, and yeah, it's real. It's a real thing, and so I just try to identify it, and of course, talk to my kids about it, and I mean it's nothing you can do, but I do think we need to challenge some of
Have
those.
any of your children ever said, "Mom, I want to look like you"?
Not directly. If anything, they kind of tease me for being so light. They make fun of me, and it's great. It's funny. You know,
Hey,
we love each other. So.
oh, I love it though. That's so cute. They
Mhm.
sunny outside. Where's my mama go? No, I'm just playing.
Yeah, they'll say something like that. But if you
Oh
met
man.
them, they're kind of crazy like that. So.
Oh man. You have beautiful children, by the way.
Oh,
I
thank
had
you.
I saw them at the All
Yeah,
Black
all
National
three of them were
Convention. Y'all
there.
three of them were right there. Beautiful. She has beautiful children.
I don't know
I
if
think
I'm
it was
gonna bring.
two boys and no, two girls and one boy, right?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll
Yeah.
bring them all back. It was too exhausting keeping up with three people.
And your son is really tall.
Yeah, he's about 6'8".
Yeah, he was tall. Yeah,
Yeah.
he's a tall guy. Handsome guy, tall guy, tall guy. Yeah. So all right, watch talk. Watch talking act. Watch talking act. Thank you so much, brother, for coming through
Thank you
and
so much.
and asking those powerful questions. Appreciate you, brother.
Ashe.
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 All right, Dr. Watkins, we got it in tonight. We got it in tonight. You stay, you know, to
Hey,
yeah,
my
yeah,
bad.
yeah. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. So again, thank you so much for your time and your energy and your wisdom. Please don't be a stranger. Please come back. The
Yes,
platform,
I'd
whenever
love
you want to
to.
come back, just come in.
Yes.
They love you. Everyone in the chat is like, thank you, thank you. So we love you. We appreciate you, and come back anytime.
Awesome.
And you
Thank
say you
you.
want to come back to talk about metaphysics, right?
We can talk about anything you want to talk about.
All right,
This
let's
was
do it.
fun.
Let's do it, Doc. Let's
All
do it.
right.
You take care.
Take care. Bye
All
bye.
right. Bye bye. All right, family. So thank you so much for tuning in. Appreciate you all tuning in and dropping in to, you know, to ask Dr. Watkins some questions. So I really appreciate that. I mean, she's a beautiful sister, man. Beautiful sister. And you know how you meet somebody for the, you know, when you first engage with somebody and you could tell, you know, this their disposition. When you meet her in person, the same person that you see online is the same person you'll see on the internet. She has a really beautiful disposition, just a beautiful soul. And so I felt nothing but positive vibes when I was in her presence. And even when I talked to her on her phone, she's just a beautiful person, very genuine person. And so I appreciate her coming on. And I appreciate you all in the chat hanging with us, hanging with us. Appreciate you all. I'm trying to think, I'll be live again on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the Read Book Club. We'll be discussing Chapter 9 of The Color of Law, which talks about state-sanctioned violence against the Black community. State-sanctioned violence. That's right, family. They'll never tell you that some of that violence that occurred in the past, right, that it was state sanctioned. So we're going to talk about that this Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So even if you don't have the book, family, just tune in, click the link, come on in. I'm guarantee you'll learn something from the build. And if I don't catch you on Sunday, check me out this Tuesday at 7 p.m. I have Dr. James McIntosh. He's going to come on. We're going to be talking about the ADL. We're going to be talking about the war on Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. A lot of you may not be aware that Dr. Leonard Jeffries, okay, our Baba, our scholar, our warrior, who actually is responsible for Africana studies programs being implemented in HBCUs, that brother was labeled anti-Semitic in the 80s. Like they tried to take this brother down. The media, the universities, like it was bad. And so I know that we all are talking about Kyrie Irving and Kanye West, but one of our finest, one of our own, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, was labeled as anti-Semitic, and they tried to ruin that brother's life. And so we're going to be talking about the ADL. We're going to be talking about the war on Dr. Leonard Jeffries this Tuesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, this upcoming Tuesday. And then lastly, family, you know I'm going to be live on Thanksgiving, banging on the turkey day. I know Dr. Watkins, she mentioned it. She was like, yeah, the Thanksgiving holiday, you know. But you know, I'm going to get online on Thursday, and I'm going to start banging on the holiday and promoting the necessity of us to stop practicing these European holidays. You know what our ancestors taught us. Shout out to Dr. Ishaka Musa Barashango, who wrote the book European Holidays, African Menticide. And so I'm going to go live on Thursday to talk about Thanksgiving and what that does to us as we continue to, you know, what that does, you know, when we continue to celebrate holidays or holy days that aren't ours, right? And I know we try to make it ours, like it's just a day of thanks, and it's just that we try to repurpose stuff and all of that. But the reality is, we have our own holy day. It's called Emoja Karamu, or Karamu Emoja, which means unity feast. And so I shout out to a lot of brothers and sisters. I see it online. I see a lot of flyers for the Emoja Karamu, or maybe Karamu Emoja, but the unity feast that you know, that I think a brother had created that holiday like in the 70s. All right. And so we don't have to celebrate their holy day. We could actually celebrate our holy day. And so I'll be talking about that on I see Aquarius 79 said banging on the turkey day. So I'll be online Thursday morning, probably around 10 a.m. bright and early, talking about Thanksgiving, the origin of Thanksgiving. And I will be promoting, you know, something else, man. We got to do something else. We can't keep on doing the same thing, man. We're contributing to our mental side, man, by contributing, you know, and latching on to their holy days when we have holy days of our own. So anyway, family, if you don't catch me on Sunday, catch me on Tuesday, or you can catch me on Thursday. Have a black-tastic week. Peace and black